You're watching Battle Axe Theater. That means drinking, vulgar language, vaping, and occasionally over-the-top nudity. Viewer discretion is advised.
Battle Axe Theater, that's a good name.
Battle Axes. Battle Axe, man. He brought the preach video.
Battle Axe Theater.
Death from Battle Axe. I don't know if you guys have seen, he just rants, and it's awesome. And he just starts screaming and yelling. I need to have a beer with that guy.
What is up, everyone? How's everybody's Monday going?
Yo, yo, yo!
Woo! Pushing it close.
Yeah.
What is up, everyone? I am Punk Shoe. I'm here with my boy Def.
Yo!
And we are Battle Axe Theater. Tonight, we are Battle Axe Theater live covering raid culture right up there and MMORPGs. I don't know that raids exist in anything else. I'm sure they do, but we're going to talk about MMORPGs as we always do on episode 11. Already episode 11. That's crazy.
That is kind of crazy.
I feel like we've only been doing this for a short period of time.
Yeah, like a couple of weeks maybe or something?
Something like that, like maybe a month, but apparently we've been doing a little bit longer than that.
Yeah.
If you guys are tuning in now, we are going to have some news toward the end of the stream. You're free to leave and come back, put us on, VOD tomorrow or whatever, but we are going to have some news regarding the channel at the end of the stream. So if you are going to be around, feel free to hang out and stay tuned for that part. As always, we'll start off with our week in rear view. This is the segment where we talk about what we've done for the last week because this is a Monday stream. So we got to talk about what we did in the rear view last week. So what did you do last week, Def?
What did I do? I made a rant video
You did make a rant video.
on Paladins. So, that took up my week, I guess. Other than, regular real life things like putting up a fence in my backyard and all that kind of stuff.
And the storms.
Boring stuff,
Lots of storm stuff.
Oh, yeah. We don't live too far apart, so you know what we've been going through.
Yeah, we've been getting some crazy storms. Had a tree limb fall, but I'll wait for my turn to talk about that.
We've been going through hail. Get it?
Hail. But
Get it?
it's terrible.
Sorry.
What about the one thing that we started playing last weekend?
What now?
You already forgot. You're Project
Wait,
Gorgon, dude.
Dude, oh, yeah, sorry, man. There's a gnat I'm looking at, and it's driving me crazy.
He's about to get into a fist fight with a bug, y'all.
I almost punched my microphone. But anyway, yeah, Project Gorgon, dude. Wow, that game is...
Just say it.
It's ugly as fuck. But if you give it a chance, man, it's pretty... It's fun, and I never got... From what I know about UO, it seems that's kind of what UO did. You get into a dungeon, you got a puzzle to figure out so you can unlock the next version or whatever, a different pathway. I never got to experience that kind of gameplay, so I mean, it's pretty neat.
I think it's very much in line with what's happening with Saga of Leucemia. So for me, it's kind of scratching that itch until Saga comes out, but like obviously Saga is going to go an entire differently direction with a similar concept. But I just think it's really neat. Like these games where you start off as just a person and then you unlock abilities, I find that intriguing because you feel like a normal dude and it's like personal growth. Like if you learn how to craft things from wood or do plumbing or electrical work, that's a skill that you've used. It doesn't matter whether you're 12 years old or 46. Like that's still a skill that you've gotten at that time in your life, and the same can be said for those type of game concepts.
Yeah.
So what did I do this week? I got into Project Gorgon a little bit more than he did. As I said, we were out without power for almost, it was about 14 hours. It was lovely. Had a big tree limb fall in my backyard. Almost took out a structure in my backyard. It's a gazebo. I said that to Discord the other day, and everybody laughed at me. Like, oh, you fancy man, you got a gazebo in your backyard. But yeah, almost took that out. We thought it hit the house, but luckily it didn't hit the house, so we're good there. Def did put out a rant this week, so I didn't really do anything in terms of video production other than, you know, like the editing in terms of reviewing the video and getting it back to Def to finalize. But really good job on that. If you guys haven't checked that out, I'll post a card here in the VOD and a description, or a link in the description. Basically, it's a video covering paladins and how new classes are overpowered. So paladins being champions of the realm, not a paladin in an MMO. But really good game. If you're an Overwatch player, you should definitely check it out. It's kind of like, you know, when us playing Destiny, when we're Warframe fans, each game kind of offers a little something special that's unique to them. So definitely should check that out.
Yeah. And it's a rant. I just want to throw that out there. I'm probably wrong on a few things, but I just wanted to bitch about, you know, these new characters getting all this love and all the old characters not getting any love. And it kind of pisses me off a little bit.
And that's what the rants are for, right? For you to get shit off your chest.
Right. So,
sorry, I'm having hardware issues here. Come on, Mike. Tighten up. There we go. Yeah, we do intend on, well, I intend on picking up Classic WoW. I'm going to play it a little bit with the Saga of Leucemia people and some people from Battle Axe who choose to join in, but I will be doing it super casually because we are going to be doing something fairly hardcore here over at Battle Axe. So there's some stuff we'll talk about at the end, but I'm going to be dividing my attention between fun, chill games on weekends, games we're playing to make content on during the week, and then playing World of Warcraft Classic during the daytime and dabbling throughout the evenings after we're done with Battle Axe stuff when this guy here's got to go to his day job. Because my day job is, I can work at 4 o'clock in the morning for my day job. It just depends when computer parts get here. So
lucky.
All right. So let's see here. Do we want to do anything else? Do we want to just go right into the topic? I mean, it's only 9 after. I feel like I'm talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour like I'm on cocaine.
Are you?
No, I don't do drugs.
Oh.
Don't do drugs, kids. It's bad. Be cool. Stay in school.
He's lying.
I don't do cocaine.
Dude, we did a couple of lines a couple of weeks ago. I'm kidding. We didn't.
Yeah, you better redact that shit because I've never done cocaine in my life. I've done some other shit, but that was like 20 years ago.
Oh, man. I didn't like cocaine the 3 times I did it. A minus.
Let's move on. Let's move on. All right, so tonight we're going to talk about raid culture a little bit. I've got kind of an idea of where we'll go from this, but it's probably going to end up going completely awry and go and do something that's completely different than what I initially planned. So I want to talk a little bit, start off talking a little bit about our history with raiding. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to open with that, Def, because you've been raiding since EverQuest, right? So EverQuest is a little bit older than Final Fantasy, so I kind of want to look at this from a chronological standpoint. So why don't you tell us a little about your raiding experience and tell us a little bit about raiding itself in EverQuest.
Well, I was thinking about this. As I told you, my guild in EverQuest was kind of a family type guild, casual. We weren't we weren't at the top of the charts in progression, you know, doing planes of power and all that kind of stuff. I remember going, I want to say my first raid in EverQuest was killing Trakanon and Old Sibyllus.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of neat because you could take a group into Sibyllus and like do the entrance or whatever, and you could take that group and dive into that dungeon until you basically hit that difficulty wall where you're like, oh shit, I need like 50 other people with me. But that was my first, I remember being my first, like, from the entrance all the way down, killing Trakanon, if I'm saying that right. It's been so long. Holy shit.
I don't know what that is, but it sounds right.
Yeah, he was a dragon at the very bottom of Sibyllus, and then I remember doing Chardock. It's the same thing. It was different than what WoW introduced. It's just a big old public area, until later expansions. And chat
Right.
can correct me if I'm wrong. Um, like when Planes of Powers came out, it was you get your raid group together and you go in together, and it's tough from the start. Um, but I never really rated hardcore until I went to WoW, and Naxxramas was my first raid in WoW. You know this because you were the raid leader, and I had to get Ventrilo because we had to speak, you know,
I think you
have
joined
contact.
for the fights where you had like the positive and negative charges that you had to trade. Do you remember that one? I don't remember what any of this shit's called. It's been forever. But I think that's why we needed the communication, because most of the other fights in there didn't really have that kind. You didn't need the verbal communication, but those
Yeah.
that boss you did. I don't remember what it's called. If you guys remember raiding Naxxramas, we're talking new Nax, not old Nax. We're talking Wrath of the Lich King. I don't remember the fucking
Yeah.
boss's name. Like, this is like the era of content where we really raided. But yeah, so that, like, you needed that voice. It was something where we had to have that communication, and you weren't used to that because you played EverQuest, right?
Right. Yeah. There's no Ventrilo was like a new thing, and I'm like, what? Do people not read the fucking chat logs? Do they not
Nope.
see what's going on at the bottom anymore? Like, and it got to that point to where it's like, I would log on WoW, and I'd be like, "What's up, gang?" To the guild or whatever, and
Sorry.
it's like, can no one fucking see what I'm typing? Like, I know they're fucking seeing this shit, and it pissed me off, but. Anyway,
You
I
open up
just-
Ventrilo and there's like 20 people in there just bullshitting.
yeah, yeah, and I pop in. I'm like, "Hey, motherfuckers, did you not see my text?" But anyway, it's kind of funny how in MMOs, like, texting is not the cool thing, but in real life, texting is the cool thing.
And nobody wants to talk.
Yeah.
And there's some sort of irony. And yes, Thaddeus, thank you, babe.
Oh, is that the one with the ramps where you had to go on one side? And
Yeah,
the other
you
side?
had to kill the little
Okay.
mini things and had to die at the same time, and then you had to make that jump, and everybody always missed the jump, and you're like, come the fuck on, it's a jump.
Yeah, that's me. I fucking suck at jumping in games. Yeah, we've been playing Destiny 2 for shits, and you see how bad we couldn't complete that heroic because I kept falling off the fucking map.
Right.
Anyway,
So one thing I want to know about. Okay, so you raided kind of casually with us during Wrath of the Lich King. You were kind of like we tried to transition into 25 mans. I think you started a new job or something like that. So once we went into like Old War and whatnot, you kind of phased out and you were in and out of the game every couple
I
months.
didn't get to see Old Aurora, man. I hated that because when I went back to see it, I'm like, holy shit, this place is huge. This is what I missed out on.
But you did get to raid in like almost full time in Pandaland, right? With Rez.
Mr. Pandaria was probably the most raiding I've ever done, and it was the most progressive character I've ever had. I played a Fury Warrior, and I had my off-tank spec, and I would off-tank for the guild. But that was my most, like, best in slot, every piece of gear,
Okay.
best I ever been geared up to current content. So, and I've said this before on the show. Mr. Pandaria was kind of like reminded me of WoW in a lot. I mean, EverQuest in a lot of ways, as far as the way they did some of their raid mechanics and the way their zones were laid out. Their zones were huge.
And EverQuest or
And Mr. Pandaria
Okay,
kind of
gotcha.
reminded me. Yeah.
okay, I see. Yeah, right. You've said that before, where it kind of correlates, like
Yeah,
in terms of like the way the zone appearances and things.
I-
So, go
I
ahead.
love the questing in Mr. Pandaria. It made me think of EverQuest.
It was a unique expansion. Like, it's weird because like a lot of people say, well, that's when it started going downhill, And I kind of have to disagree because I feel like Mista Pandaria was like its own little unique animal. Like you had a lot of your core concepts that you've had from World of Warcraft, but that's when they started introducing new kind of concepts, and that's when they introduced monks. And I was a monk healer at the time, and it was like this whole new thing. I know we're getting kind of off on a tangent here. I just like to talk about that because it's like it's one of those expansions that everyone loves to hate on, but the reality of it is I think most people like have like a love-hate relationship with that expansion because it's also when they started going, you want loot, you want loot, you want loot, here's some loot, you know?
Yeah, I hated when that was announced. I'm like, fucking pandas? Are you shitting me right now? I wasn't excited for it. Even though
same, I was like fucking pandas, but yeah, go ahead.
Even though there was some, all the hardcore wowers would, mention that there's pandas in the lore. It was never touched upon, but there's pictures of pandas and old graphics and stuff.
Yeah,
I'm like, so the fuck what, man? I just thought it was so dumb, and I already had a problem with WoW with the cartoon graphics. But like you said, we're getting off topic here.
So the reason why I wanted to talk about your experience with Pandaland is because that's when you really, and Mr. Pandaria is when you were part of the B team and you were actually raiding full time and you got to feel what it was like to raid in World of Warcraft at the level that I had been doing in Burning Crusade and Ice Crown, and that's something that we'll talk about here when it's my turn. But can you tell me a little bit about that raid experience as a whole?
Well, you just reminded me, my first raid in WoW was with you guys, Naxxramas Unlimited, and then I came back actually when you guys were doing Wrath of the Lich King. Or
right.
Was that when you moved on? I can't remember, but I remember killing Cindergrosa, and that was like a big milestone. The boss before the Lich King.
Yeah, you came back when we were kind of in the process of getting ready to switch over. It was that part where I think you were raiding with Nymphea at the time because she was doing a weekend raid, whereas I was doing reset night raids.
Yeah, definitely. That's it. Because I couldn't game on the weeknights very much. But anyway, and to tell you about when on Mr. Pandaria, my raid team, it was awesome, man. I was going in. I just rolled a DK, wanted a tank, and that's that. And then I switched to warrior for the team later on. But I remember on my DK, we killed Elegon, man. That was such a hard fight when it first came out, man. And just when we did that, that's what raiding is, man. It's like working together and finally defeating that boss. There's no greater feeling, that's why a lot of people play MMOs. It's
also why a lot of people quit MMOs.
It is.
Yeah, I mean I get you, man. There's just like you said, there's nothing like working and banging your head up against a mob for 2-3 weeks and you finally get it down, especially when the last week you're doing it, you're rolling over a save in World of Warcraft and focusing strictly on that boss to push progression,
Yeah, and I can't remember. Do you know what zone that was? Elegon? What raid that was? Was it Temple of... No. The point is, the first encounter in that damn raid was that was probably the hardest fight in that raid, I think.
It's Moshigan Vaults, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. It sounds right.
Or Moshigan Temple. I don't remember what the raid was called because I remember there were 2 dungeon instances. You're talking about the big Star Dragon, right?
Yeah, Elegon. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it was Moshigan. Anyway, you were saying?
Oh, I was saying that first encounter, that was the tough... As a tank, that was one of the toughest raid fights I had in a while.
Are you talking about where you had a tank swap with the dogs?
The dogs, yep. That's it.
Dude, all right, so when I went into that, my raid guild, which was clearing the heroic firelands, whatever, it was, we were doing that, and then I stopped playing while they went and they killed, Darkwing Duck or whatever his name is, Deathwing. And so I came back and I started playing my Panda Monk, and I wanted to heal, and we go into Moshigan Vaults, dude, and we spend the entire night not being able to get past this one encounter because the tanks don't know how to swap. And it was such a nightmarish experience that I decided not to raid with that guild or raid at all anymore because of that. So like I think something like clicked in me that was like, nah, you don't have time for this shit anymore.
Yeah, I can see that, but when we started out, it was nightmare, dude. It was fucking like frustrating. I mean, because I forget all the mechanics in that fight. There's other little things that was going on besides the tank's duty, and that was giving us a hard time as well. But man, we would spend one night, you know, over and over and over and over, and maybe not even defeat that boss, you know, or maybe defeat it, 30 minutes before raid time's over, and get a couple practice stabs at the next mob, and do that. That was just so fun, you know.
You're making me miss it.
And now eventually, we got to the point to where it's like, I can't believe this used to be fucking hard. You know what I mean?
You mean like going in there at current level?
Well,
like,
you know, just that whole team, and this is raid culture, right? This is what we're talking about. Like having that same group of people stick to it, stick together, and eventually, you know, you've done it so many times, you fail a million times or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You get it down, you know, you get the groove, you know how this other person's gonna play, you know how this other tank's gonna pull the mob to the side, or however their game
right, because you kind of synergize and you figure out how you guys work together. You know, you might not be a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, but that peanut butter and Nutella works pretty good too if you do it right.
Right, yeah, or honey.
Or honey, yeah. Peanut butter and honey is pretty good. So do you have anything else you want to say about your rating history and rating in general at this moment?
No, I don't think so.
So as far as my rating goes, like I never got the chance to play EverQuest. If you guys have been watching this stream for a while, you know that I had a potato. And looking back, I think I could have played EverQuest, but I just doubted that the machine would perform. But I was running on an old AMD K2 processor. I didn't have any type of dedicated graphics, and that was still kind of like a new notion at the time. You know, it only been out, dedicated graphics only been out for a few years. So I had a PlayStation 2. I bought that pre-order when it came out, and when I heard that Final Fantasy was coming out with an MMO on PlayStation 2, that was where I really started. So like I started playing EQOA, and coming from a mud environment where there's like all this intricacies, like in terms of leveling skills and stuff, I wanted to switch, you know, back to that after playing EQOA, because it was like level, get an ability, level, and it just didn't have that same appeal that a mud did to me. But when I found out Final Fantasy was coming out, got addicted to that, spent years and years playing it, and I started raiding with a raid that they called Sky, and it was I don't remember what it's called. It's something Ruan Gardens, I believe is what it was called. But it was a really cool concept, and very much like you're talking about open world raids, it's the same premise, right? It's like you're going out and you're looking for bosses that spawn on like a randomized timer throughout the world. So you've got, you know, you may have a guild full of 100 people that are, you know, relatively active throughout the week, but then you've got those 5 or 6 people that are active all the time, actively scouting for spawns. So it's like, you know, every night if you're on at 5 p.m., you know, have your pots, have your food, be ready to raid, because you never know if something's going to spawn. And that was kind of how it was for me. And I remember going and fighting Kieran up in Sky, where you had to go and you had to fight a bunch of mini bosses that could drop crafting materials, but ultimately they would drop a key item. And once you've collected all the key items from, I think it was like 7 mini bosses, you could then spawn Kieran, which is the main boss, which is a giant manticore that dropped something. It was like a crafting material that was like worth like 1.5 million gil at the time, which was quite a bit back then. So yeah, so that was that raiding experience. Then we had something that was called Ground, which was even more like crazy, because it was no longer this isolated like zone, if you will. Ground was any mob that spawned on the ground, any mob that spawned anywhere on any of the old continents. So there were just slews of them. You know, you had your 4 or 5 big dragons, but then you had smaller raid things that you could do that. Def's still fighting that gnat.
Oh, sorry.
That's a gonna go fisticuffs with ya. But but yeah, like, so we started raiding ground, and I just remembered, like, it wasn't like it is in modern culture where you have to get max level. Like, max level then was 75, and you could start raiding at like 71 because.
And yeah, and Adric kind of nails that. He said one of his favorite things about EverQuest when he was level 48 and the cap was 50. They're like, "Hey, come along with us, join us." And he was like, "What? I could raid?
Mhm.
I'm not even max level, you know." That
And it
wasn't a thing back then, you know.
And it was crazy because you could actually have fairly decent gear at, like, 5 levels below cap. Something that was still completely viable at max level.
Yeah.
And I miss that. Go ahead.
I do too. That's what I was about to say.
Oh, I'm sorry for stealing the words, bro.
It's cool, man. Do it all the time, man.
But I remember that culture. It was all about it was all about having the best gear that you could possibly get. But there also wasn't this requirement of you being like best in slot outside of raid. You know what I mean? Like, you could go in there and be missing a slot or two, and nobody gave a shit because everybody was working toward a common goal. And those people that were geared were putting out so much, they were kind of semi-carrying, if you will. But it was a welcomed environment because it was about the group play. It was about going there and taking down these bosses before the gold sellers could get to them.
Yeah, like, I remember in WoW, like, someone inspecting me and looking at my talent tree, like, "What the fuck are you doing this, man? Why do you have this on? Blah, blah, blah. You shouldn't even be here. PvP gear, what the fuck? Get the fuck out,
That reminds me of my first, like, real, what I would consider hardcore raiding experience. So I started playing WoW back in Burning Crusade. Like, that's when I really started playing it. I've been playing it on and off since vanilla, but I met a friend at work, and she was like, "I'm on this server, come play with me." So I joined this server. It's, Shadow Council. It's a smallish RP server, and there weren't a ton of guilds raiding, but the ones that were raiding were actually making some really good progress. So I started raiding in tier 4. And I remember, like, I kind of had the shoe in because I was a resto shaman. So I'm a healer, and they're like, "Well, we need a healer." But I can remember Amy Ranth. I don't know if you know Amy Ranth. She used to be a Tauren warrior tank. But anyway, she was like, "I see that you're using this, this, and this. You need to go put in the work." And I was like, "What?" She's like, "You can go PvP to replace this piece, and this piece." And I'm like, "But I don't PvP." And she goes, "You do now if you want your raid spot."
Damn.
So, I mean, that was the gist of it. Like, she wasn't rude about it, but she was, just trying to encourage me, get out there and do it. We all had to do it because back then in Burning Crusade, you had PvP spec or stats on your gear, but you couldn't get purples, generally speaking, outside of doing your daily heroics or whatever. So in order to get purples, you had to go get your PvP purples, and even though the stats were, you had resilience and shit like that, you still had higher primary stats. So when you were raiding, it was more impactful. So that was a very interesting experience. So I ended up getting in with Black Omen, which was the second best guild on the server. I mean, it was the best horde guild, second best guild in terms of progression overall on that server. And then later on, and we did our thing with. With Nax and Old War and Trial and ICC, but I'll save more because I want to talk about us as a Battle Axe / Unlimited / Resurrection community. I want to talk about that a little bit at the end of the stream. But I did that, and then as you know, I joined Infusion, which was like, we weren't world first, but even though we were on a small server, we were still making solid progression. And to the point where, like, sometimes we were within the first couple hundred guilds to kill this across the entire world, and that was kind of nice. And the raid culture there was crazy different than what we experienced in Unlimited. And like, so
you elitist.
Really, it was. But what I did is I took my learning experience from that and I brought it to Unlimited, so that way we knew how the content went, we knew how the fights went. And while we were a little bit behind everyone else, we were still relatively current. So that was a blessing in and of itself. But I kind of did have to make that sacrifice. I had to be really good geared and elitist and analytical so I could serve you guys, man.
And a dick.
But the raid culture was completely different. Go ahead.
By the way, guys, sorry that we're touching on WoW so much, but that's where most of our raiding experience was. Like,
right. And it's not to say we didn't raid in Rift. It's not to say we didn't try some raids in ESO. It's just, this is where the bulk of the raiding experience comes from. And I think many people who may see this in the future are going to come from a similar place, either that or EverQuest or Final Fantasy. I think those are the 3 big games during that time period where raiding was really the thing.
Well, I want to say this before we move on. Raiding in EverQuest, I mean, there's so many stories I know where, you were pretty much required to show up 3 nights a week for like 4 or 5 hours. It was such a new thing back then, it was kind of never done before. And so you had all these college kids, doing their homework and studying and stuff while playing EverQuest. It was just this consuming thing. Like, no matter what's happening, I'm raiding, even if I have to do something else on the side and pay attention more to EverQuest than my own college work. It's
So
kind of crazy.
that kind of segues into the next topic. Is like a job, right?
Yes.
Yeah, raiding was like a job, and that's what I was going to say is like it really became that. And to kind of put things in perspective, I don't know if I ever told you this. I was going to tell you this the other night when we were talking, but I kind of wanted to save it. I actually used to schedule my schedules when I worked at Best Buy. When I was going to college and I was working at Best Buy, I would schedule my work schedules. Keep in mind, guys, I had a wife and a kid at the time, but I would make sure my schedules worked around my raid schedules because it was like a second job. It really was. So,
And you were the leader.
yeah, and I was the raid leader, so I kind of had to make sure I had decent times. But you got to remember, though, I was also raiding with Infusion while raiding with Unlimited. So, and those were kind of dark times. You forgot that you existed as a human being and that you had family and stuff like that. But I think anybody who takes something like that as seriously and hardcore as I did, like, it's easy to get wrapped up in that, and they would understand. But
And I'll say this: I did the same thing. I got kind of a promotion at my work, or at that job at the time, and I was going to be working in 2 different departments. And I'm like, well, as long as I can be home at this time on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I'm down. Like, that was my only requirement for taking on the position. And I want to say this: rating under you, it was like a job. You were very stern on raid preparedness. You wanted everybody to show up with food. You wanted, your flask, and you would even spend time getting mats and stuff for people to have flask and to make flask and stuff.
Right.
So
yeah, that was one of the things. Like, and it was like a job, right? So, like, I was in a managerial position at the time, and it's like it clicked with me with, like, leading raids. It, like, made sense. I was like, this is kind of like working with your staff. Give Def just a second. We're losing him.
Uh-oh.
Could be Discord, guys. Sorry. I think you're back enough. We'll work with it. You look like you're on the satellite connection, but we'll work with it.
What the fuck is going on?
I don't know. Is it my internet?
I don't know.
Did
Are we
this
still
shit
here,
last
guys?
week. I don't know. We'll continue because this will catch up in the VOD. So, it was very much. Can you still see me?
I mean, you sound like a robot right now.
There we go.
I think it is Discord. Oh,
Are we back? I think we're back.
I think we're back.
Oh, it's me. But I can't disconnect. So we're just going to have to work through it. Can you hear me okay, though?
You sound like a robot. I don't know how you sound in chat.
Oh, man. I'm making stream look like shit. All right, well, the chat should be able to hear me okay once this catches up and goes VOD. But anyway, it was like a retail...
Okay, you sound good now.
I'm good? It was like a retail environment for me, like, because you guys were all, like, we had our officers set up that would help with the preparedness. It was my job to lead you guys. Like, ultimately, we're all putting in the work, but you guys are there strictly to put in the work, and your pay is gear, and you're there to hang out. But I think sometimes it's easy to lose touch with that part of it, that funness reality of being in an MMO. So, I mean, sorry guys, that whole thing like fucks up your your whole perception and
Train of
like
thought.
train of thought. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was like, it was my job to make sure you guys were prepared. And you know me, I didn't handhold. If somebody was like, hey, where do I go find this? I would be like,
You
well,
were a dick.
use your resources. And you say that I was a dick, and I prefer
why-
asshole guys. Everyone called me an asshole, not a dick. Okay. I was an asshole, but they loved me is what they said.
That's what I was about to say. You were a dick, but I loved you for it because you set the tone for everyone to take that time seriously. Because when you have people setting aside their real life time, 3 to 4 hours a night during their work week or whatever, it should be taken seriously. Everybody should show up prepared. Everybody should read up on the mechanics. Everybody should, at least give it their best shot. And if they're not feeling good, don't fucking show up. Someone else would like to try it out.
And Turin just said that too, and that was my mentality around it, right? Because like if I've gone and I've watched the videos, and 4 other people from the raid group went and watched the videos and did the research on the fight, or even loaded up the PTR and tried the fights on the PTR. They went out and they leveled up their crafts, and they went out and they're getting the best gear they can by doing their dailies and stuff, and they're prepared. And then 6 other people show up to the raid, or 5 other people show up to the raid, and they don't know what they're doing, or they're not able to carry themselves because they haven't been doing the daily work to get better gear that can help them kind of fudge it. And they don't have the buffs from their potions and their food and so on and so forth. And they're 15 minutes late. Like, there's nothing worse than all of that combined. And you always had like 1 or 2 people that did that shit. So I took it upon myself. I would post at the end of the previous week before we would start raiding the next week. These are the videos for the fights that we're going to be ending up in a progression this week. Research up on it. I would always be on several hours before raid so anyone could ask questions. I would farm every morning before work for materials, and I would hold back some of my materials to craft potions, and I would always come stocked with potions and flasks, anything alchemy-wise, anything food-wise. And if I couldn't craft something, I would have one of the other leaders who would focus on a different craft to have that already. And then we would sell it to you at cost. So you weren't getting it free. It's not my job to give it to you for free. But you wouldn't have to pay the auction house markup, and that was saving you a ton of money. And I'm putting in the time that I'm not getting paid for. So if you're not going to at least come to me and be like, look, I need 2 flasks for the night because I just need flasks. And I put in the time, and now I'm going to put in the time to lead a raid. You can go make some gil or gold at some point and come buy some damn flasks at cost.
Right. Yeah.
So, so I was kind of a dick a little bit.
Well, I mean, you really weren't. I'm just joking, of course, but
right.
You were just stern and wanted everybody to be on the same page. You know what I mean? And like Ren's saying, if raid starts at 7, be there at 6:45. And when you have half the raid doing that, it's kind of frustrating. It's like, well, who's gonna need flask? Who's gonna need this? Who's gonna, is our tank gonna show up? Is one of our healers gonna show up? It's fucking 6:50 and they're not here. Fucking Larry. You know what I mean?
That's ultimately what ended up making us stop raiding on Unlimited, is because we had a tank and a healer that just kept having problems with that, and then they were subpar because of bad internet and whatever other excuses they had, to the point where they got frustrated with me and left the guild at one point, and it severed the guild as a whole for a while there. And then we had once we recouped and were raiding Ice Crown, Jay and Amelie just disappeared. One of them was a tank and the other one was a healer. When you're a 10-man raid group and you lose half of your healers and half of your tanks, it kind of disrupts things a little bit, and that was kind of sad. But go ahead.
I just want to say, kind of to touch on Adric's, what he was saying, to play devil's advocate and reading up on the website what to do or watching videos. It kind of like how I am personally. I can watch a video for days, and I can read up on it for days, and it does help. It tells me, what ability does what. But until I do the encounter, that's how I learn. I'm probably going to suck the first few tries, but just doing it helps me learn. So I got to do that raid encounter a couple of times, and then I'm good. Then I catch on, So I think, a combination with this raid culture is, everybody's different. Everybody learns at a different pace. a different, style and all that kind of stuff. And that's something you got to factor into and be patient because, for example, in Unlimited, we were patient with people. The guild is patient with me and made sure I understand every little aspect of that mechanic, and then it clicks, and then we're just going boss to boss to boss,
Right, and that was one of the things that I strived to get to with Unlimited. So Unlimited was always a little bit behind the curve because for the most part I was pushing top tier content with the other guilds on the server because I played much more hardcore than we casually did in Unlimited. But I think people appreciated that, and I met new friends that we brought into Unlimited from those environments. But one of the things I always strive for was like, okay, we wiped. I get it. But we're like Adric, like you said, man, we're here to have fun. So let's just get back in there. We know the mechanics. Let's go ahead and try it again. And that was something that I really tried to harness. And it wasn't until we started pushing hardcore progression and Ice Crown Citadel that I started to get a little bit more aggressive because it became about numbers. It became about being able to show off. And when you're on when you're on a small server like Shadow Council, in order to grow your guild to cater toward the raiding environment, you kind of had to appeal to those raiders. And if you weren't holding some sort of position on the front page on WoW Progress, then you weren't doing it right. 19th place is not good enough. You need to be in the top 10.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Well, one thing I want to say is if you didn't try an encounter and fail over and over or at least a couple of times, then it doesn't mean anything, If you're able to go in there and just perfectly, flawlessly execute that encounter the very first try, and there are guilds that can do that. There are, excellent nerd gamers or whatever. That's cool and all, but to me it means more when we tried that encounter 6 times and that 7th time we get it and it's like, holy fuck, yes.
And I feel like that's the way it should be, but I don't think that excuses people from understanding the mechanics of a fight.
Right,
and like if you're not going to learn from a video, you can at least go get the visual stimulation of it so that there's some familiarity when you get in there. Because my issue was like we were doing Festergut and Rotface, and I believe Rotface was the one on the right, wasn't it? The one in Ice Crown Citadel that had
was his name Rotface?
Was it?
Festergut and maybe it was Rotface, but it didn't.
It was
sound
Rotface.
Right to me. It was it?
Yeah.
The 2 giant ogres.
Yes.
Were they ogres?
They were the patchwork creatures that were created. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so Rotface is the one on the left-hand side. So Festergut was the one we were having trouble with. Rotface was the one that did the room full of AoE, poison crap. Mm-hmm. But so we were doing Festergut, and there's a lot of mechanics that are going on, dealing with the slime mechanics and things like that. But when you're a DPS and you just need to not stand in things, but you're dying to them because there's so much going on and you didn't take the time to watch the video to at least expect it, I have problems with that. But you know also that from Legion experience that I also say that it's all about repetition, right? If it's your first time there, I don't expect you to do marvelously because you've never seen the fight before.
Right.
And that was my argument with you in Mythic Pluses. Like, you can't say Def dies a lot when you never bring him to fucking Mythic Pluses. And when I started bringing you with me, dude, we were doing them every week and making better and better progress every week. So
yeah, and we had coordination. We were calling out stuns, we were calling out interrupts and stuff like that. And that goes a long way because I know when you and I play games together, we want to call everything out. Even if I know you see that I'm on this mob on the right hand side, I know you're right beside me and you see it, but I'm going to call it out, and you're the same way. Like we call out everything that we're doing because communication is key.
Right.
Like if you don't have communication, and let's say Def is standing in some fucking fire and no one's alerting me of it because I'm focused on my rotation and getting my big dig deeps out, call me out on that shit, and then I'll fucking move. You know?
So yeah, so as far as preparedness goes, right? I mean, that's kind of it's key. Like you need to be prepared, even if you're just 75% prepared. That's at least more preparation than some of the experience that I've had with other players. So we've got about 20 minutes or so left. So I want to move on to the next part of the subject after I address Adric. So going back to what Adric was saying, as far as that's part of the adventure and just jumping in. I think that's one thing that WoW did right. I'm okay with there being a heroic level and a regular tier. I don't really give a shit about mythic, but I think that when you introduce a raid tier that is the casual average gamer still finds fairly difficult, and with the assistance of like 2 or 3 people that are willing to carry, if you will, that that have that mentality of like, hey, I want to help you guys with this because I want you to experience it, not because they're obligated to, but because they want to be there to help their friends succeed in a normal piece of content, even though they may have nothing to gain from it. I think that was a very good thing that World of Warcraft did, because I really enjoyed doing those Saturday raids and when Kaizen, to help people see the raid content that they didn't get to see, that we were raiding in heroic mode and Legion.
Yeah, it's a heartwarming thing, not to get cheesy, but like it's awesome when someone gets that piece of loot and it's like, oh my god, thank you guys so much, and you're like, yeah, it's piece of shit gear, man, congratulations.
You look pretty now, and it's don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking about looking for raid. That is a piece of shit, because that doesn't encourage people to do shit together. It encourages people to push a button, not know shit, steamroll, face roll, and get gear that looks almost exactly like what I'm getting out of fucking mythic content. So no, you fucking looking for raid. But I'm talking about helping your friends.
Now, yeah, I get you. I'm 100% on board. Fuck LFR. But for people, the lazy people who don't want to prep for raid, if they at least do some LFR, they get that visual stimulation like you were talking about. So that's probably the only good thing that come from that, So
I can say I'll agree with you, because I've done that a time or two where it was raid night and I forgot to watch a video, so I went and did LFR to try to get some loot before raid, and was like, oh, that's how this works.
I wish it didn't exist, but I have taken advantage of it, where like our raid nights are maybe Thursday night, but Tuesday I'm gonna just LFR it up and just see see what it's like.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. So, we talked. Go ahead. You got something else?
Oh, I was just going to say fuck LFR. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it really took a lot away from the game, and it made it so that way if you were doing it for an appearance, you no longer had to do actual raid content. You could just do it. So you effectively, even though there was a potentially somewhat subpar raider, you lost that raider because they were only doing it for the visuals, and now they're not even raiding anymore because they can just do LFR and get the visuals. But that's a topic for another night. So I want to talk a little bit about what it was like to raid in top tier guilds. And this is nothing against what you may have been talking about, Renfail. This is not anything against top tier raid guilds altogether, because there's obviously going to be the one-offs, but my experience with running with a couple of the top tier guilds on our server, and granted this is a small server, so I mean we're talking like we're in the top 1,500 across the world, so it's not like we were fabulous and getting world first or anything like that, but we had guilds that were making solid progression and had some sort of esteem on and renown on Shadow Council itself. But I want to talk about that experience. So one of the experiences that I had is the first raid guild I ever joined. I don't remember what the name of the guild was, but I know Merlini on Shadow Council was the leader. Do you recall Merlini at all?
I don't.
So he was a warlock that had a little bit of rapport on the server for raiding, because back in the old days, if you were raiding, you were raiding. It didn't matter if you were in the current tier or not. It was still a pretty prestigious thing to be able to say, like, if tier 6 is out and you're rating tier 4, it was still a pretty big deal back in Burning Crusade. Now it's not so much. You're either doing heroic plus in the current content, or you're just a piece of shit. But anyway, he had a tier 4 guild that we were raiding with, but he was acting so hardcore about it, and we were doing a touch of tier 5 too, and he was just so hardcore about it. and people would like it was like a revolving door. It was like working at a bad job where like you had people that were good at what they do, but they just were tired of taking the shit all the time. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, I show up 3 days a week, 3 nights a week, and we raid for 4 hours a piece. And it's like we're dealing with that same culture, people coming unprepared, coming late, we're not getting started. Even the fucking raid leader sometimes doesn't know how to do a fight because he didn't expect to get to that fight or whatever. I'll give him a pass on that because I've been there myself. But there was just so much going on there. It was so toxic, right? Like, it was like when you think about elitist jerks, that's the way it was, right? Like when I say elitist jerks, you probably think real assholes, like these guys that like, well, actually, if you divide this by that and then multiply it times here, and then in the event of this and this percentile, you're gonna fuck you. Like, that's the way it felt. And it's like, why are you like this? And you're rating a tier and a half behind. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, you have no reason to be so elitist. So I left and I started Unlimited. And my whole goal was to create this casual hardcore scene, which we'll talk about here in a minute. But it was just so, like, every time I joined one of these guilds, even though I knew somebody personally in each of these guilds, I felt like I didn't have a connection, because it was always like, you've got 70 people in this guild that are all active. They're on every day. They're all doing stuff. They're all crafting. They're all mining. They're all doing all the shit for raid prep for the sole purpose of progressing that content. And like, there's just something to be said about not having value and sitting outside of a raid.
Well, it's kind of like having a job you love and having a job you hate. We talked about raiding and raid times and raid prep and all that kind of being like a job,
Right.
Well, whereas like we did with Unlimited and whatnot, it's a family. It's a casual, lazy core guild. It's your boys trying to accomplish stuff together. Whereas what you're talking about is kind of like you go to a job every day that you fucking hate because you got to grind and do this and be spot on and just you're a number, not a person. And that's what I'm getting.
I think it's like day labor, right? Like, you're going to a day labor office, you're making sure that your resumes button up, all your skills are they're perceivable, right? Like, if you're going to go do like a job where you're doing some filing at a company, you're in, a button-up shirt, maybe even a tie, slacks, and you're there. But you had a job at one point where you were making like $40,000-$50,000 a year, but now you're just sitting here and you're waiting for your turn to work. And that's what it was like being in those types of guilds. Like, yeah, granted, I always played a healer. So through most of Wrath of the Lich King, I played a Resto Druid. And I want to give a huge shout out to Infusion. They were an amazing guild. They were great people. But at the end of the day, like, there was this camaraderie during a raid. And then, after a raid, it was like, well, I'll see you tomorrow night, guys. And that was it. And like, we got to the point where we would take, like, I did make a few friends in the raid group, and we would take our prowess with what we were able to do, and we had alts, and on weekends we would run a paid raid, so we would fill 3/4 of the raid up with us on alts, and then people would buy into that raid, and then they would auction house basically bid on items, and at the end of the raid we would split the money up between the people in the raid. So that was kind of cool.
It's kind of like with your top tier elitist raid is you do it just to say you did it, instead of working with your friends and accomplishing that satisfactory feeling. Like, it's more like
you're not doing it to do it with your friends. You're doing it just because you want to say you did it first.
Bragging rights.
Mm-hmm. And for what? Yeah, like, and think about it, dude. At the end of Wrath of the Lich King, 90% of the guild was like, okay, we're done. And they either quit playing WoW, they went to 10-man raiding in their little small cliques that were within a large guild, or they went to a server because they felt that they were better than Shadow Council, so they transferred to a larger guild. Go ahead.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because we played WoW for years, and one thing everyone noticed if you were playing WoW is that when that last raid tier comes out, that last raid boss for that expansion comes out, there is nobody playing the damn game. I mean, there are people playing, of course, but most people kind of quit. And they don't. They go play the other game, the latest and greatest, shooter game or another MMO that they play on their off time. And some people, I myself had this schedule. I would play WoW until the end of the expansion, then I'd go back to retail EverQuest and play EverQuest. It's everybody kind of has that, and it's I don't know. You just kind of mentioned something, and it kind of triggered that in my head.
I think it's perpetuated by that large raid culture, right? Or any raid culture, I guess.
Yeah, and it's like a game shouldn't be like that because, as I was saying, you asked me what my raiding experience was in EverQuest. It's like you could go into a zone with a group until you hit that wall, until you realize, oh, I just unlocked a fucking raid boss. There's no way in hell we can do that, Yeah. It's little things like that kind of make those older MMOs, special.
Right. And before we continue on, guys, I want to let you know we're probably going to run 20 minutes or so late. Is that okay with you, Def?
Yeah.
You're going to make it? Okay. All right.
Yeah,
so,
I got to pee, but I'm going to hold it, man.
As long as you're good. That's why I was checking, because I know you like to let everyone know. But yeah, so like that raid culture, that was the whole thing. And the reason why I wanted to talk about that was because I raided in both these different cultures. For 2 expansions, I raided with top tier guilds and raided with our group at the same time. And I had more fun with us because we were doing it because I liked you and these other people and they liked me back. And, I don't know if Lai is still in the chat or not, but I can remember Chub. And if anyone here is from Unlimited, I can't really see chat statistics. It doesn't show the people properly, but my wife would raid with us. And we also had our friend B, and my wife's hunter pet was pulling shit all the time in Karazhan. And we'd always blame it on Chub. That was running joke. And 10 years later, that was still the fucking running joke. And it was hilarious because those were the good times we had together. And we can talk about B, being this fucking playing on a potato machine and, finally gets to go to a raid with us and runs in and fucking consecrates and pulls an entire room and does that for like 3 raids back to back. And we're like, B, you're an idiot. What are you doing?
Making memories, man.
Yeah. Or Z floor tanking, man. Like there's just like, there are these distinct memories that we have 10 years later that I don't remember anyone from Infusion, and it sucks because I didn't really build the relationships with those people. It was more like, the people like your friends at work, and then you leave, and then that's it. You go do something else with the rest of your time outside of work. And that, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was just gonna say, and that type of environment, versus the family environment, the friends that you make, the experiences and the memories. You get into another guild and it's like, hey, grab your shit, let's go. No excuses, Yeah. It's almost like a militant, like, I don't know who said it in chat, but it said it kind of defeats the whole fantasy game purpose. You know what I mean? It's like,
right.
I need to like figure out where I need to move and cast this ability. It defeats that. It's like you show up, you need to know exactly what this does, And that's what we all want. We all want to defeat the boss, but it's at the same time, it's like, have a little fun, kind of go in it with a light heart and just fucking work together and communicate.
That's why I want to talk a little bit about Unlimited. So if you guys haven't been caught up with everything that we talk about, so there's a progression, right? There's a progression in Battle Axe Theater. We were originally called Unlimited. It was a link shell that I founded back when we were playing Final Fantasy XI, and then eventually became the guild when I saw guild culture was kind of shit in top tier, and I didn't like the way it was going, so I wanted to build my own dynamic and WoW. And then we eventually, I kind of stopped wanting to do that whole leadership thing, shifted over to Resurrection, eventually Kaizen, split off from them. And ultimately, the core of Unlimited throughout the years ended up becoming what Battle Axe Theater is. There's still a few of us missing, but if they ever get back into gaming, I'm sure they'll be here with us. And the culture that I wanted to build, and Kaizen, I've been told that they were inspired by this mentality, is that it's like a family unit. And you had mentioned the word in passing, but I'll say it here again in a moment. So you have a hardcore casual, but I think there's something different from a hardcore casual and what we call ourselves is it's a term that we coined many years ago called lazy core. So you have a hardcore casual mindset in the sense of we just want to play this game to enjoy it, but we also want to be kind of nerdy about the stats and learn how to do these mechanics and actually go do them. Even if we're a little bit behind, we still want to go do them to experience them. And that was like your hardcore casual, but we took it to the next level and we just decided that we didn't want to do certain things, that we were too lazy to do it. We'd rather do something else with our time and be silly in raids and things like that. So one of my biggest things was getting people together, offering those services that, most raid guilds would say, hey, come with stuff. Whereas I'm like, show up an hour early and I have stuff that you can have at cost. So you don't have to out of pocket that, because I know you guys work and shit throughout the week and I've got some extra time. I've put in the time and effort and I've got this for you. So I made that stuff available. I made sure that links were accessible way in advance so people could research the fights. And if they didn't, at the beginning of every single fight, I always explained the mechanics in depth, whether it was your first time or your 10th time at that raid. And if it pissed you off because it was your 10th time, feel free to zone it out. But if you were bringing anybody in there that was either new or we'd already done that, if it was already the normal raid, it was just a quick rundown. Okay, guys, remember, we're going to do this, Z, you're over here, B, you're over there, Death, you're over here, so on and so forth. And it
goes back to communication, which is key in raids.
Exactly. And that was one of the things that I found, like, I loved nurturing new people. I loved being like, oh, dude, you're one level away from max level. I've got some shit I can craft for you. I want you to come to raid. And then people would be like, wait, what? You want me to come to raid? Like, I didn't even join to raid and I don't even know how to raid. And it's like, I don't give a fuck. You want to come raid? Okay, you do? Well, we'll half carry your ass and get you some gear so next week you can kind of pull your own damn weight a little bit. Yeah. And that's what we did. And I got some of the best raiders out of doing that. People who never expected to be able to raid just because it was a passion of mine. Because I started leading raids during Nax Ramus back before there were very many guilds raiding it. I used to work with some other people in the community and we would do big pug raids every week. And every time I got into a raid, like, the leaders always seemed to kind of fuck off. And I'm like, okay, Punk Shoe's going to take care of this. G is going to take care of this. I'm going to show you guys how to do the content. I'm going to talk you through the fights. And guess what? At the very least, we always got to the very last boss in Nax Ramus as a pug. And that was pretty impressive because it's 25-man Nax.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. So, you kind of took me under your wing, like you helped me get my Ventrilo set up and all this shit, And,
it was important to me, man. It really was.
Yeah, and there's been experiences, like recently when we were recently playing WoW, I'm like, okay, I've been working. I haven't had time to look up shit, but I got invited to go on the weekend raid. And I'm like messaging you and Tails, I'm like, what the fuck do I do on this fight? Because no one explained shit. It's like they expect everybody to know, like, hey, we've done this a million times, but they forget about the 2 or 3 people that haven't done it a million times. So, when you're leading a raid, you got so much responsibility, so much on your plate, that it's a good practice to explain the fights before every fight, even if it's just a quick synapse or, like a quick overview. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And what Adric said, how quickly it's forgotten what it's like to be a noob. We all had to start somewhere. And I think that's part of the fun. Like, I like nurturing people. I like showing them what a game is really about. Because I feel like you build loyalty when you do that, because you make these friendships that last, because people can say, I remember 10 years ago when I didn't even know what raiding was. I barely even played WoW. Like, I barely knew what an MMO was. And you took me under your wing and we did this. And now, I'm part of a core group in any new game that comes out. That's, we're raiding together. And I fucking love that. And I love that mentality of, like, we're all just trying to enjoy a fucking game. We're all trying to have fun. And I don't care about pushing the hardest level content. Like, I want it to be challenging, but I don't want it to be to the point where you're hurting friendships over that. Because at the end of the day, like, it's funny when Z-Face tanks. Even if you didn't get the kill, it's fucking hilarious. Like, how the fuck did you even manage to die over there, kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a fucking memory, dude. It's something that we're talking about right now, and it happened, 8 years ago, Like,
I remember when we were fighting, what the hell is her name? The chick in the Legion that was in the water. I'm having a brain fart. Big Nordic figure. But anyway, I'm on my demon hunter, right? Hilda?
Shit. I want to say Hydra, but I think that's from something else. It doesn't matter. Continue.
So anyway, we're talking about. Now I gotta know this now. I'm looking this up. Helya.
Helya.
So we're fighting Helya, right? And she's going on the phase where she's about to go in the water. And this is before the Demon Hunter change, where Demon Hunter was not stand here and hit things. It was jump in, jump out, you know, put your left foot in, put your left foot out, do the hokey pokey, and then punch her in the face. So I was doing that, and then I jumped forward just as she pulled back, and I jumped way into the map, into the water. And I don't know if you remember, but that water was like poisonous. So you would take damage as you're swimming out of it, and I died in there. And it happened several times because I would keep doing it. Like, that kind of shit's funny, but you would get yelled at for that, dude. I got yelled at for overheals when I was healing hardcore progression stuff because the heals needed to be useful. So if you were number 4 or 3 on the heal meters and you weren't number 1 or 2, but then you were like miles ahead in overheals, you would get in trouble for that because you needed to make sure that those heals were actually doing something because you weren't wanting to pad meters. You're wanting to actually have effective heals. So I would remember that. But when we were raiding together, it was just like, okay, doesn't matter. If you guys want to compare dicks, like look at your effective heals, look at your over heals, and look at your shielding. Like just look at all that. Just, you know, see who's got the biggest number then. I don't give a fuck. But like, and that's what I like about what we kind of did with Unlimited and now Battle Axe Theater is we're this kind of mentality. Like if we do end up raiding in Pantheon or doing these types of raids in Saga or whatever game we end up playing, if we rebuild that in-game community and we decide that we're going to raid, that's how it's going to be. It's going to be about enjoying what is here, the experience of being in whatever game that is, combined with a little bit of hardcore. That's what it's going to be. And taking care of each other, because that's what it is all about. Because that's what, again, going back to all these videos we've been making about fun with friends type shit, like it is about being there and doing that with your friends.
Yeah. And an MMORPG isn't shit without your friends. I mean, if you're not making friends, you're not playing an MMO. You're just playing it to show off your big dick, you know?
Pretty much, yeah.
So I wanted to ask you something real quick. In the future games, you know, we have this old school MMO craze coming out. So it seems to be coming back. People are tired of the modern style and whatnot.
Right.
What is something you think would benefit raiding? Like something new, something different. Do you got any ideas?
New or something like taking a touch from the old?
Maybe a touch from the old, but what would you like to see in raiding in future games, I guess is what my question would be.
I want to see tiered difficulty. That's something that I've really grown fond of. I don't want to see LFRs. I want to see raids that I like having that, like what WoW implemented, like the dungeon guide, where like you can pull up a raid boss mechanic from inside the game. I think that's cool.
I agree because it's kind of like, you know, I follow Project 99 on Facebook, and it makes me want to play the fucking game. But anyway,
I will say that I think it should be a skill that's attained, though.
Yeah, that'd be cool, or something you gotta obtain in the game somehow.
Like if you run in and it's an open world raid boss and you get killed by it, you acquire information on him, not individually. You go, okay, you have learned how to fight Ursoc the Terrible, you know. And then you can go and you can get your raid book group together, and then you can open up your quest log that everyone's got, you know, whatever book is built into the UI, and you can press a button and it will share that knowledge with the entire raid.
Yeah.
I think that would be sick.
Cool. You know, each time you die, you get a piece of a tablet, and then, you know, you die 4 times, you've completed that tablet or something.
It's something like that. Or even like being able to go into a library and getting like the first piece of it, you know, or being able to hit that same piece, which is a book in a library, and you got a weekly cooldown on it, and after you read it 4 times, you know how to do that raid boss. Like, I think that kind of shit would be kind of cool. But here's my number one thing, dude. I can remember sitting in Shatrath, and I remember my fucking tier 6 shoulders, lightning bolts and shit, and my Tauren, spark, and my big-ass fucking one-handed mace, and my big shield with the fucking gem in the center of it, just sitting there, going AFK, tabbed out, and come back to 6 or 7 tells. Dude, your gear looks really awesome. You must be in a really high tier guild. Or, dude, how do I get in your guild? Or, dude, you look super sick. Can you come heal for me? And it's
that was what I loved about EverQuest, man.
And that's what's missing. Prestige.
Yeah.
If I'm a raider, I want people to know that I'm a fucking raider. I want them to know that I'm a no-lifer. I want them to know that I know what the fuck I'm doing. I want them to know that I have worked for this, or I have incredibly powerful friends that have carried my ass, and it makes me worthy. That's what I want.
That's what I miss about like identification of those shoulders that you have. Like, people know you got this from that boss. That's a super rare percentage to drop, and it's super hard to kill, and it's like you own those motherfuckers, and someone sees that and they don't see that item, because WoW grown into this thing to where like everybody's cookie cutter. If you got best in slot as a warrior, hell, everybody looks like that until they came out with the transmog system, which is honestly, if I'm being 100% honest, that's what kept me playing WoW. Was they introduced this transmog system to where I could look unique, or I could rock my favorite tier stat.
And I think that's something we're going to see in a lot of games is transmog systems, because if people want that cosmetic, but that would only make it sweeter, right? If you had a piece of gear that wasn't attainable.
I just had an idea, like, make that attainable through raiding.
The transmog?
You know what I mean? Yeah, because it's kind of unfair that, progression happens, expansions happen, and then all you have to do is go back and farm that shit and just throw it on.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, they need to, like, maybe the appearances become locked or something. You know what I mean? Yeah. Where like they're no longer transmoggable if you never had that piece of gear. So you can still go get the gear if you wanted it, but it's not available in appearance, or at least certain pristine rare drop pieces per boss.
Yeah.
Like a tier piece or something like that. The equivalent of what a tier piece is in WoW. But we're kind of over time. Do you have anything else on the topic before we wrap up?
I wanted to. I asked you what you would like to see in future rating, and this is something I wanted to bring up. And I may get a lot of shit for this, but I would like it for a game to come out to where, let's say, you die in a raid. And you see this in like shooters and whatnot, but I would like for you to be able to tab to a character, and you see them in like a third-person view, and you see their spell bar and what they're casting and stuff. I would like to see that.
I like that.
I think that would be so cool, because let's say I'm an off tank, or I'm wanting a main tank, and I keep wiping on this boss, but I got my partner who's doing great, and you know what I mean? I could tab to them and see exactly what he casts, when he casts it, when he moves and stuff.
Yeah,
stuff
that makes
like
sense.
That.
Oh, I see what he's doing. Yeah.
Or if someone keeps fucking dying all the time, you can expect, switch over to them and see, like, oh my God, every fucking time he goes to this blue spot on the ground that's killing him.
Yeah, that would be kind of. I mean, in that regard, that's kind of why we're recording. But yeah, like that would be cool, because like if you did die, you could keep an eye on somebody else who keeps dying.
Yeah,
I mean that kind of creates.
Send them tells, like, hey man, move.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be sick. I mean, I don't know about the second part, but I definitely would like the part like if you did die, even if it's a wipe, to be able to go in there and see how somebody else is doing the mechanic, so that way you can. And I don't think that would be super hard to implement, because we see it all the time in games.
Yeah.
So I think that would be really sick. So you basically just take over their camera, if you will. All right, so we're going to start wrapping up here, guys. I've got some announcements. I don't know how much of it we're going to talk about. We'll touch on it briefly and then maybe go into a little bit of detail, because I want to wrap this up in the next 5 to 10 minutes. If you have any questions, please go ahead and throw those in chat. As always, if you're not already following us on social media, be sure to check us out. Battle Axe Theater over on Facebook, Twitter, obviously YouTube. We are, I'm thinking about multicasting to Twitch and Mixer, so that's something to consider in the future as well. If you'd like to join in the conversation in Discord, feel free to hit that link that's in the description. It will be there live when the VOD goes up, and if you're watching now, it is up. So as far as announcements are concerned, we are going to be taking another break. And I know we just took a break, but Def and I have come up with this brilliant idea in order to produce higher quality content and allow us to have some free time to spend with the community and talk about that content and come on as guests on the streams. Because as you guys know, like, we do this on a week-to-week basis. It's Battle Axe Mondays, and then we go right into production or video. And we do put a lot of production time into our video content, and it is quite time consuming. So if anything ever comes up in life, you know, you get a flat tire or a tree falls down in your backyard, power goes out for 14 hours, all of that impacts whether or not you can produce things, and it makes it quite stressful if you're trying to put together in a crunch. And let's be honest, it can make your content a lot shittier than it would normally be. Yeah. So we have come up with this idea that's going to be on a quarterly basis. So every quarter we're going to release a new series that focuses on a singular game or concept, if you will. And we're going to cover that in 8 to 10 episodes, just like you would get, you know, through a television series that airs weekly. And we're going to try to kind of stay within the normal, like a normal flow pattern for each of those series with the different games. And eventually we're going to see Saga of Leucemia come across the table. We're going to have Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. And I know we've got a lot of Pantheon diehards that watch us and started watching us because of Pantheon. But, you know, let's be real, there's no content to really cover right now that hasn't already been touched on. The little tiny bit that is released, it's already touched on by 4 or 5 other YouTubers out there that are able to put something out that's much less produced, but it gets you the information. And we can't possibly do that because we have a certain standard that we want to keep in terms of production. And if we're 5 to 6 days late on that, I feel like we could just put something together that's a little bit different than what other people are doing and other topics that are worth discussion. So we are going to start doing that. Do we want to tell them about the game that we're going to be covering?
If you want, man.
I think we can talk about the game, but we'll kind of leave it at that. So we've got a lot of requests in the past and some of our Pantheon videos and some of our EverQuest videos to talk about a game called Project Gorgon. And that's something that we talked about at the beginning of the stream that we've been playing. There's a reason why we're dabbling with it. We wanted to see if it was something we were truly interested in. And there's a lot of good foundation there to work with. And I think what we're going to do is, starting next week, we are going to be playing that full time during the week when we would normally be producing videos. After about a month of solid gameplay, formulating a structure, capturing clips, we're going to have an entire month after that to edit the clips together and produce, some of them will be documentary styles. There may be a rant or two in there. You're going to have deep discussion pieces. We've got some ideas about some other types of stuff that we're going to do. And our 1-year anniversary is coming up next month as well. So let's just say big things are going to come in the fall. So we're going to take a couple months off. We're still going to be doing Battle Axe Live every Monday. You may see random pieces of content if we just feel like doing it on a Friday, you know, something like a rant or a small guide or something like that. But regularly scheduled content is going to start in September. So it'll be like the first Friday of September is when the first video will go up. And while you guys are enjoying that, we will be playing something else for a month and then recording the content while there's 2 months worth of content playing for you guys. So that way, while you're watching that, we get to watch your reactions and interact with you, spend more time in the comment sections, spend more time talking to other YouTubers and going on their shows and having them on Battle Axe Live, all kinds of different things. Go ahead.
Yeah, and also hanging out in Discord. I mean, we see several of you guys joining our Discord, and, you know, when we're doing videos during the week, we don't have time to really hang out. And that's one thing I think that's going to be great with this new format, is we get to hang out with everybody. And, you know, because we met a lot of cool people doing this thing, you know, doing the whole YouTube thing. And, you know, without people watching this and people liking our videos and watching our videos, you know, there would be no Battle Axe. So it's kind of a cool way to be able to produce content, hang out, and actually produce better content.
Right, exactly. And I hear what you guys are saying about Project Gorgon, and as we play it and we formulate that opinion ourselves, that'll definitely be something to touch on. So just to give you an idea of how it's going to work, is we're going to be covering games. You're going to have like a couple tips videos that may come out, you know, like a top 10 tips, a starter guide. You're going to have videos that are just kind of like a hype video, because that's what we tend to do, right, Def, is we kind of hype a product we're excited about. So we'll do a hype video, and then we'll have some more in-depth discussion. And as always, it will be about how this game fits within the realm of MMOs, how it's going to impact the future of MMOs. Much like we've talked about Saga and we've talked about Pantheon. Go ahead.
Oh, I just finished your sentence.
Gotcha.
Pantheon. Yeah.
Yes.
And I do want to say that, you know, it'll most likely be a non-biased opinion. You know, we do our best to be, you know, honest. You know, we hype things that we like about a game, but we'll also, you know, pinpoint some things that we don't like. You know.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't know exactly what's going to come from it. And this is kind of an experiment on our part too. And we hope it goes over well, because I'm not looking forward to taking another 2 months off. I mean, you know, as a brand, as we're doing what we do, we want to keep the growth. And that's why we're going to continue doing these Monday evening streams. But it's just one of those things where we want to try this out because we think it'll make more time in the long run. Because ultimately what we're going to get is we're going to get 2 months of time to spend playing games and networking. So, and then it's a solid month of just pure production, which means you guys, basically we're going to work on a video until it's done. And that might, you know, one video might take 5 or 6 days, but it's to the best it can be. And then we might do a short guide that only takes 2 days to complete, or Def might do a rant that he can record on a Saturday afternoon. So it's just going to open up a whole lot of time for us to interact with you guys more, to play WoW Classic, to play some of the EQ emulators, to play Saga when that finally comes out, and to play Pantheon when it finally comes out, and maybe Gorgon when it goes live. So you got Chronicles that's coming out, Ashes that's coming out. There's so many games in 2020, and we need to prepare for it now.
Yep.
So anything else?
That's it, man.
All right, guys. Well, what's up?
Oh, I was gonna say I would like to go pee now.
Okay. Well, we're going to let Def do that, guys. But until next time, we will see you then. Peace out.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.